Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we are diving into something truly fascinating. We're going to explore a massive, incredibly common dynamic in human psychology and spirituality. We are looking at how our internal beliefs, specifically those unhealed, totally invisible wounds we all carry around, literally dictate the external reality we experience every single day. So let's unpack how the stories we tell ourselves actually shape our world and, way more importantly, how we can finally navigate past them.
So picture this. Have you ever walked into a crowded room, maybe a big meeting or a social gathering, and felt this overwhelming certainty that everyone was staring at one specific flaw of yours? Maybe you thought you said something super embarrassing earlier, or you were just feeling kind of insecure about your outfit, and suddenly every whisper or quick glance across the room felt like it was directed entirely at you? Just hold on to that feeling for a second. We have absolutely all been there. But before we get into why our brains do this to us, I want to share a wild psychological story that hits the nail on the head when it comes to this exact phenomenon.
Section 1. The Phantom Scar Experiment.
Okay, let's dive into this. The setup was actually brilliantly simple. Participants were brought in and told they were part of a study on visible facial disfigurement. A professional makeup artist applied a highly realistic, really noticeable scar right onto their face, and they were allowed to check it out in a mirror. But here is the crazy twist. Right before they were sent out to interact with people, they were told the scar just needed a quick touch-up. During that touch-up, the artist secretly, and I mean completely, wiped the scar off. So the participants walked out the door and entered totally ordinary social situations, completely unaware that their faces looked totally normal.
Think about that. They walked through all of these interactions fully, 100% convinced that they had this glaring, visible scar on their face. But the reality? There was no scar at all. Their faces were exactly as they had always been.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happened when the participants came back. So many of them reported feeling incredibly judged. They said people were definitely staring at them or giving them the cold shoulder and subtly rejecting them. But remember, the strangers they talked to saw absolutely nothing unusual. No scar. What these participants experienced wasn't actually reality. It was the sheer, overwhelming power of their own inner belief completely dictating their reality.
Section 2. Our invisible wounds. Transitioning from that clinical experiment to our everyday lives, it really makes you wonder, how often do we do the exact same thing?
Because the hard truth is we rarely encounter life exactly as it is. We really don't see the world through a perfectly clear, objective lens. Instead, we experience life through the stories we already carry around in our heads. Think about the invisible wounds you might harbor. Old criticism from a tough teacher, a painful betrayal from a friend, a past failure, or just moments of deep shame. Those become our inner scars. And just like those people in the experiment who assumed everyone was staring at their physical scar, we look through the lens of our inner scars and mistakenly assume everyone around us is seeing our failures and our inadequacies.
And guys, these invisible wounds have a massive impact. Without even realizing it, these unseen memories of rejection, those harsh words that linger way longer than they should, they dictate everything. They shape how we see ourselves when we look in the mirror. They totally skew how we interpret other people's actions. Have you ever turned a totally neutral comment into a huge insult in your head? Yep, that's the inner scar talking. Ultimately, they shape how we move through life. We end up living from our wounded places, getting defensive or retreating out of fear, instead of just living from our deepest, truest identity.
Section 3. The False Self. To really understand this, we're going to introduce the profound philosophical framework of Thomas Merton, drawing from his amazing 1961 work, New Seeds of Contemplation.
So the crucial point is defining what Merton calls the false self. The false self is the identity shaped by fear, by those wounded memories we were just talking about, and by this exhausting, insatiable need for external acceptance. When we operate from this place, we aren't being authentic. We're just wearing a protective mask made out of our insecurities. And when we live from that false place, we constantly project our own inner wounds right onto the world around us, exactly like the folks in that phantom scar experiment.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference Merton was talking about. On one hand, the false self is anxious, it's shaped by fear, totally desperate for acceptance, and it just constantly projects its wounds onto everyone else. But beneath that exhausting false exterior lies the true self. According to the source material, the true self is rooted in God. It's formed not by fear, but by love. And what is so powerful about the true self is that it doesn't pretend the pain didn't happen. It doesn't deny that we have scars, but it absolutely refuses to be defined by them. It's a complete, fundamental shift from operating out of fear to operating out of love.
Section 4. Finding the True Self.
This is where we shift gears to the really comforting, inspiring part of this whole journey, the profound path to actual healing and self-discovery.
So how do we actually get there? How do we stop living from these wounded places and start uncovering that deeply rooted, true self? Well, the spiritual journey, this path to healing, is not about becoming someone else. It's not about achieving some perfectly polished, unblemished version of yourself that, frankly, never even existed. We spend so much energy trying to reinvent ourselves or fix ourselves, but you know what? That's entirely the wrong approach.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because if the journey isn't about becoming someone brand new, what exactly is it? It's a return. It is returning to who we've always been, right beneath the fear, beneath the shame, and beneath all those protective masks we've been wearing for so long. In God, our scars may remain a part of our story. We don't just magically erase the past or the really hard things we've survived, but those scars, they lose their power over us. They simply become a part of our narrative, but they no longer define our core identity.
Thomas Merton captures this so poignantly. He writes, "We are not what wounded us. We are what we are loved into becoming." Let that resonate for a moment. You are not the rejection you faced. You are not the failure you experienced. You are what you are loved into becoming. That is the true essence of the true self.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought today. Is what you fear others see in you just a wound you have not yet healed within? The next time you feel judged, the next time you feel like the entire world is staring at your metaphorical scar, take a breath and ask yourself if that scar is actually there, or if it's just an unhealed memory asking for your attention and love. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it sparks some deep reflection for you today.